Upon learning that my husband ignored me, who had fainted in the hospital, just to deliver a coat to his female assistant, I decided to get a divorce. Thaddeus immediately agreed. Worried about what? She's a woman who married far away. She can certainly take care of herself. I'll give her a few days to calm down, then I'll be merciful and forgive her, just to see if she dares to cause trouble again. That day, he posted a photo on social media of him holding hands with his female assistant at the dinner table. In one room, just the two of us, sharing meals through the seasons, for the rest of our lives, as long as we are together. Looking at the last day on the calendar, I called Caspian. Caspian, can you help me buy a ticket home? Really? That's great! Finally free from that unreliable person. Wait, Caspian will come pick you up personally. The young man's voice on the other end was filled with excitement. After hanging up, Thaddeus walked in, reeking of strong perfume. The red marks on his neck were glaring. Who was on the phone? Thaddeus casually asked, his eyes glued to his phone, not even glancing at me. Caspian. The loud ringtone completely drowned out what I was saying. Thaddeus quickly answered, hearing a girl's sweet voice on the other end. Thaddeus, thank you for the clothes you sent the day before yesterday. If it weren't for you, I would have definitely embarrassed myself. I really didn't know what to do in that situation. Feeling a bit guilty for saying that, Thaddeus lowered his voice and got up to go to the study. I couldn't help but smile self-deprecatingly. It's already the cooling-off period. What am I still hoping for? I quietly made myself a bowl of noodles, ate it in silence, and then went back to the bedroom to pack my things. Thaddeus talked with the girl on the phone for an hour. As usual, he sat at the dining table with a magazine, waiting for me to bring over the warm breakfast. But after waiting for a long time without even a cup of hot milk, he finally looked at me with some impatience. Is it just because I didn't accompany you for the checkup? Insomnia isn't a big deal. The doctor prescribed medicine, just take it on time and there won't be any issues. Stop being so dramatic. Besides, I've already agreed to your divorce. What else do you want? Who are you showing that sour face to every day? I stopped what I was doing and looked coldly at this once close person. After he left that day, I fainted in the hospital. If it weren't for the doctor's timely rescue, I might have been gone long ago. After that, neither I nor the doctor could get in touch with Thaddeus. After a hard time getting through, I heard a girl's sweet laughter and Thaddeus's impatient voice. Isn't it just a few medical fees? Why don't you think of a way yourself? In the end, I borrowed the expenses from a friend. When I was discharged yesterday, I found out that he went to deliver a coat to a little assistant in a super short skirt just because she said she was cold. I immediately brought up the divorce with Thaddeus. Once the divorce certificate is obtained, there won't be any chance to see him again. I thought if I acted a bit colder, Thaddeus would be happy. After all, he had hoped I wouldn't bother him before. I didn't expect him to slam the magazine on the table like a hedgehog stepped on its tail, shouting, "You better not regret it." After saying that, he stormed out, slamming the door. Bang! The sound didn't affect my mood. I couldn't be bothered to think about his behavior and emotions, so I focused on my own tasks. After sending out the revision plan that the client needed, I leisurely poured myself a cup of hot milk and was about to find a movie to relax in the bath when a message suddenly popped up from Thaddeus. At the morning light club, I've had too much to drink. Come pick me up. I was about to close the page when I suddenly received another message. You are still my nominal wife, and this is your responsibility. I tightened my grip on my phone, took several deep breaths to calm myself, and then stepped out the door. Everything is for a smooth divorce. I must endure. When I found the private room according to the information on my phone, I could hear Thaddeus's hearty laughter and Serafina's playful voice from inside. Those sounds pierced my heart like sharp swords. I gritted my teeth, trying to maintain my expression, and pushed open the door to the private room. The laughter inside suddenly stopped. When Thaddeus saw me, his face showed surprise, and his brows furrowed. Are you following me? Thaddeus's abrupt question made everyone's expressions shift subtly. I opened the message page. This is the address you sent me. Serafina immediately wrapped her arms around Thaddeus's arm and said playfully, Thaddeus, I'm just worried about your safety going home alone, so I asked your sister-in-law to pick you up. That's not being mean, right? Thaddeus's expression softened. Seeing Serafina's nervous demeanor, he couldn't help but smile. Noticing Serafina's provocative gaze directed at me from a hidden spot, along with Thaddeus's tacit approval, I surprisingly had no reaction, just a faint nod, my attitude cold and distant. Perhaps used to my previous intense reactions, Thaddeus seemed a bit at a loss with my calmness at this moment. He rarely pulled his arm out from Serafina's embrace and explained gently, "We're just socializing, we're all clients and employees." I handed him the pure milk I had taken before leaving. I know. Maybe it's because I arrived that the atmosphere became a bit awkward, and everyone dispersed. Thaddeus first called a car and carefully reminded Serafina to settle down before getting into the car and sitting in the passenger seat. I silently started the car while he sat beside me, dazed. The car remained very quiet. After parking in the underground garage, I got out of the car and walked towards the elevator. As I reached the corner, Thaddeus suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me into his embrace. Immediately after, a car swiftly passed by us, causing my heart to race. "Why aren't you paying attention while walking? What if you got hurt?" Thaddeus said urgently, holding my hand tightly and keeping me close to him. Images of our passionate romance suddenly flashed in my mind. He used to always pull me close and protect me like this. But I don't know when this kind of gesture disappeared. I even forgot that I had been cared for like this. Fortunately, the elevator wasn't far away. When he pressed the floor button, I quietly pulled my hand back. Thaddeus glanced at me, seemed to want to say something, but ultimately didn't say anything. To my surprise, the next morning, he took the initiative to offer me a ride to work. "I'll drive you." I yawned and agreed. I hadn't slept well last night, so it was a good opportunity to catch up on sleep. But as soon as I opened the car door, I saw the interior was filled with sparkling decorations, cute stickers, and pink trinkets. There was even a custom-made pillow in the passenger seat, featuring a photo of Thaddeus and Serafina making heart signs together. This was clearly a declaration of ownership. I didn't expect that a decisive, domineering CEO would have such girly elements in his car. My words were sarcastic, causing Thaddeus to look a bit embarrassed. "Serafina is just a little girl, don't take it too seriously." I pointed at the pillow and asked, "Is this pillow from the little girl you took couple photos with?" But what I really wanted to ask was about the candlelit dinner couple photo Thaddeus posted on social media the day he filed for divorce. I still remember that line, "In one room, 2 people, 3 meals, 4 seasons, for the rest of our lives, you and I are each other's only." After he finished speaking, Thaddeus showed a slightly unnatural expression. I instantly felt a bit lost. No matter if he was showing off out of revenge or for some other reason, Thaddeus's attitude had changed. I decided not to ask further, quietly sat in the back row, closed my eyes, and ignored the decorations of the girls in the car. Seeming to feel somewhat guilty, the atmosphere became awkward, and Thaddeus handed over a piece of bread. "Here, have something to eat." I saw that where he took the bread was filled with various cookies and candies, along with those heavily flavored spicy strips. "How strange, your obsessive cleanliness seems to have lessened." I admit I was being a bit intentionally picky. I had been busy with work and often didn't have time to eat, so I always had to carry some bread and cookies with me. I remember one time, I was so hungry that I was in severe discomfort. My stomach was shaking from pain. Just as I took out the only piece of bread, Thaddeus snatched it away and threw it out the window. That day he was very serious with me, warning me not to eat anything in his car, not even water. I didn't expect that what he wouldn't let me do before, now he allows another woman to do freely. Those who are loved always receive a lot of indulgence. My words made Thaddeus's expression turn sour, but I didn't want to care about him, so I turned my head, closed my eyes, and pretended to rest. As soon as I arrived at the office, I hurriedly got out of the car, took the opportunity while he was parking, and stepped into the elevator first, returning to my workstation. There were many emails waiting to be handled, and I was so busy that I didn't even have time to look up. It's not that I want to stay at Thaddeus's company forever, I just have a habit of working until the last minute, and I still have some unfinished tasks. If I want to quit, I have to wait until I finish my current work first. As I was busy, by 4 o'clock, I didn't even have time to order lunch, and it wasn't until I felt a dull pain in my stomach that I realized I hadn't eaten for a long time. I quickly made a cup of hot water, returned to my workstation, ate some bread, and continued to work. At that moment, the security guard came in carrying 2 big bags of snacks and milk tea cakes, saying, "This is the afternoon tea that Thaddeus prepared for everyone, let's all share." The security guard's voice drew cheers from everyone, and many people quickly gathered around. "Thaddeus is really impressive. My favorite bubble tea is here. Aw, why isn't there any mango?" "Well, it's good to have something to eat." "Don't you know Serafina is allergic to mangoes?" The people around immediately exclaimed, and some curious glances were directed at me. The new intern bluntly said, "I heard Thaddeus got divorced. Is he going to marry Serafina? Isn't that a bit too indulgent?" Someone immediately tugged at her. "Stop talking, Mingyue is still here." The intern immediately looked a bit embarrassed. An older employee handed me a cup of milk tea and a piece of cake, jokingly saying, "The young ones just love to stir things up, don't mind her." I looked at the durian cake on the table and pushed it away, saying, "Sorry, I'm allergic to durian. You can have this one." The other person showed a hint of embarrassment. "Actually, everyone knows I'm allergic to durian because Thaddeus used to test my reactions with it. At that time, to prove his love for me, he treated everyone in the office to my favorite matcha cake every day and specifically banned anything related to durian in the office because I was allergic. Even when I was too busy to eat, he would order food for everyone and have it delivered to their desks, then sit in front of me to supervise me until I finished my meal. Now, it's just a different person. Because Serafina is allergic to mangoes, the company doesn't allow anything related to mangoes. The passion he once gave me is now all directed towards another woman. There are always office gossip. Many used to pay attention to my relationship with Thaddeus, and now many are discussing his relationship with Serafina. I don't feel uncomfortable about it. Work is too trivial, and I don't have time to think about these irrelevant people. The project I'm working on is nearing completion, and I'm communicating with clients more frequently, often needing to revise the plan 2 or 3 times within an hour. I've been working overtime for almost a week straight, and today is finally the most important moment. If I can get through this hurdle, the project will be considered complete. I stretched and decided to treat myself well tonight. I didn't expect to reach out and bump into someone. It startled me. When I turned around, it turned out to be Thaddeus. When did he stand behind me? Still working overtime? Seeing my pale face from the scare, Thaddeus asked naturally. I didn't understand why he suddenly came to find me, so I tried to calm down and replied, "Thaddeus, is there something you need?" A hint of displeasure appeared on his face, as if he didn't like my distant attitude. But he still held back and said, "The clients and projects in your hands should be handed over to Serafina. She needs the experience." A wave of unease surged in my heart. Although I knew Thaddeus was being dramatic, I didn't expect him to exaggerate to this extent. Seeing that I was silent, Thaddeus stepped closer, placing his hands on my shoulders, and said, "There are always some rumors in the company. She's still young and can't handle this. With this project, those who doubt her will shut up. As a senior, it's your duty to help the newcomers." I couldn't help but laugh and rolled my eyes. Thaddeus knows very well how many nights I stayed up for this project, almost landing in the hospital from exhaustion. But as soon as I arrived at the hospital, he was called away by a casual phone call from Serafina. My life is less important than Serafina's coat. And now, this project that I worked so hard to see through to the end, he wants to casually hand over to Serafina with just a few words. He works hard for Serafina's reputation, yet never considers whether this is fair to me. All right, let her come for the handover tomorrow. It's just in time to submit my resignation. I think I've done my best in this company. As for what happens after, with Thaddeus around, I doubt he can manage anything anyway, so it's better to let go gracefully. It seemed he didn't expect me to agree so easily, and Thaddeus was taken aback. But then he excitedly hugged me, saying, "It was all my fault before. I always thought you were stingy and stubborn, but I didn't expect you to understand me so well today. Let's go eat at that revolving restaurant in Riverside. Haven't you wanted to go for a long time?" The revolving restaurant in Riverside? That 3-star French restaurant? I used to really want to celebrate our anniversary there, but now it all seems meaningless. Thaddeus wrapped his arm around my shoulder, his tone becoming much gentler. "After so many years of marriage, what challenges can't we overcome? You should temper your temper. In a few days, we'll withdraw the divorce application. I'll also accompany you back to your parents' home. You haven't been back in a long time, so this time you can stay a few more days." I quietly listened to him without responding. He thought I agreed and continued talking excitedly. Until I saved the document and got in the car with him, he was still chatting nonstop. Sitting in the back seat, I scrolled through my social media and saw a photo Serafina posted, dressed in an evening gown, elegantly having a candlelit dinner at a spacious outdoor restaurant. The time was an hour ago. Looking at the river behind her, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. It turned out she had already enjoyed it, while Thaddeus was really thoughtful, hastily ending the previous engagement and actually willing to leave this beauty behind to arrange the next one for me. He wouldn't even change the location. In the end, we didn't get to have that meal. As he was going downstairs, Thaddeus received a call from Serafina. He looked at me distressed, and I pretended not to know who it was, waving my hand generously and saying, "I'm tired, you go ahead." Thaddeus was very pleased. He called a car for me and reminded the driver several times, looking particularly worried. As the car drove away, I saw him turn and walk towards the underground garage. In moments of speechlessness, I couldn't help but laugh, and as I laughed, I felt a coolness on my face. As the wind blew, a chill seeped into my heart. Forget it. Tomorrow is the last day. After tomorrow, once I receive the divorce certificate, Thaddeus and I will become unrelated strangers. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and celebrated my freedom in advance. When I was slightly drunk, I saw a shooting star streak across the sky, and I couldn't help but stand up and lean forward against the railing. The beauty of that moment made me want to chase it. Perhaps I moved too quickly, or maybe I lived unsteady. I suddenly heard someone urgently say, "What are you doing?" And my body was pulled back forcefully. In the next moment, I fell into a fragrant embrace. "You know this is very dangerous," Thaddeus said with concern. However, the scent on him made me feel a bit nauseous. I pointed at the sky outside and said, "Meteor, meteor." That day, we made a wish under a sky full of shooting stars, romantic and beautiful. He promised to watch the meteor shower with me every year, willing to drop everything to be with me, no matter the time or place. But year after year, he never fulfilled that promise. What I actually cared about was not the meteor shower, but the future he once promised. Thaddeus sighed and said unhappily, "It's just one meteor, right? I'll take you to see the meteor shower another day. Don't joke about your safety anymore. It's just one meteor, that's not a meteor, that's your promise, easily discarded by you. Tomorrow is our anniversary, let's celebrate together. I'll come pick you up." Thaddeus casually mentioned this without asking for my thoughts, just informing me. I noticed that his ring finger was bare, the mark of a wedding ring barely visible, clearly removed a long time ago. I was surprised to find out that he was already taken. All right. I didn't object, just treating it as a closure for this marriage. To make it up to me, this time it was booked at the same restaurant as last time. When I arrived, I saw that the reserved spot was the very table Serafina had sat at, which made me a bit uncomfortable, so I quickly asked the waiter to change my table. I waited the whole afternoon, and stayed up until midnight. My phone was almost out of battery, yet Thaddeus still hadn't shown up. I was so hungry that my stomach was hurting, so I had the restaurant bring me a small cake. After eating a little, the cramping in my stomach eased somewhat. I called Thaddeus, but no one answered. This made me feel uneasy. It was just like before. Promises made casually were never fulfilled. Every time I fall for it, foolishly waiting over and over again, it's such a waste of my time. I opened my contacts to check in, only to find that the group chat had exploded. 10 minutes ago, an anonymous email was sent to everyone in the company. It's full of scenes of Serafina and Thaddeus together, many of which were shot from angles that make it look like Serafina is seducing Thaddeus, but he seems uninterested. The email subject is shocking: assistant seduces married man, using her body to secure projects. How despicable. Behind these ambiguous photos is the scene of me handing over the project to Serafina. I look exhausted, while Serafina appears vibrant. Every word seems to be defending me, yet each letter throws all the gossip onto my shoulders. As soon as I put down my phone, Thaddeus stormed in angrily. He grabbed my wrist forcefully, his voice loud and his face twisted with anger. "Mingyue, if you don't want that project to fall through, just say it. I didn't expect you to be so vile, pretending to be nice in person while being duplicitous behind my back. You actually resorted to such a despicable method as spreading rumors. You're a woman too. Don't you think it's disgraceful to use such tactics? How can you be so hateful?" Serafina followed closely behind, hiding behind Thaddeus, her eyes brimming with tears, her red lips slightly biting, looking particularly pitiful. She looked at me with grievance and said, "Sister Mingyue, you don't have to give me that project. I don't care about the outside opinions. But I've always regarded you as the best sister. How could you do this to me? I didn't do those things. Why are you saying this about me?" As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, as if she had suffered a great injustice. I looked at Thaddeus and said slowly, I didn't do it. I wouldn't stoop to such low tactics against someone who poses no threat to me. Thaddeus's expression was twisted, and he couldn't hear my explanation at all. Mingyue, I know you better than anyone else. Over the years, you've always been good at dealing with others, resorting to any means necessary for your own purposes. As long as you think someone is obstructing you, you will act without hesitation. Your previous business partners were treated this way, and so were your competitors. Now Serafina has become your target. You're truly a hypocritical and annoying person. Serafina put so much thought into choosing this upscale restaurant for our anniversary, and yet you still did such a thing. It's really disappointing. Thaddeus caused a ruckus in the restaurant, even flipping over a table, sending dishes crashing to the floor. A shard flew into my face, leaving a small cut that immediately oozed bright red blood. I wiped my face with my hand and looked at the bloodstains, involuntarily letting out a bitter laugh. In order to ensure his project went smoothly and for the better development of the company, I repeatedly put in a lot of effort to communicate with the client. To him, my hard work seemed to be ruthless. After all these years living together, he actually never believed in my character. I wiped my hands clean and took out my resignation letter from my bag. Since you don't trust me, just sign it. We'll go handle the divorce procedures tomorrow. Thaddeus let out a cold laugh and said, Do you think this can threaten me? Let me tell you, no way. After saying that, he quickly signed the document. As per your wish, you won't need to come in starting tomorrow. After he finished speaking, he pulled Serafina and turned to leave. I looked at the mess, calmly paid the restaurant with Thaddeus's card. Early the next morning, I first went to the company to resign, then went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with a somewhat impatient Thaddeus, and smoothly obtained the divorce certificate. Thaddeus seemed anxious, hurriedly leaving with the certificate without even glancing back at me. I took a taxi directly to the airport. My belongings had already been sent back home through logistics, so I was traveling light and felt particularly relaxed. Before boarding, I sent Thaddeus one last message. The keys are on the bedside table. From now on, let's not meet again. After sending it, I blocked him and turned off my phone. Then I boarded the flight home. After the plane took off, I leaned by the window, watching the city shrink smaller and smaller, finally feeling a sense of freedom. Finally leaving a place that had bound me for years. What would Thaddeus's reaction be when he saw the message? Would he be surprised, or feel relieved? I think the latter is more likely. After all, he has finally gotten rid of me. My thoughts involuntarily drifted to the clouds, back to the past. Once we were an enviable couple, both close and in perfect harmony. In pursuit of love, I chose to marry far away against my family's wishes. At that time, he held me tightly and promised, from now on, I will never let you down, I will always be your family. But later, he boasted in the family group, what's there to worry about? She is a woman who married far away. She can take care of herself. She will change her mind in a few days. I will wait a few more days, then generously forgive her and see if she dares to cause trouble again. When did his concern and care for me turn into his confidence that I couldn't live without him? Or rather, did he believe all along that I could never leave easily? The more I thought about it, the colder I felt, so I simply stopped thinking and closed my eyes to sleep. If a relationship makes me worse rather than better, then it means that relationship should not continue. Breaking it off is the best solution. Ironically, Thaddeus thinks I would never let go. When I woke up, the plane had already started taxiing. I followed the crowd out of the terminal and saw a prominent sign held high among the people waiting to greet arrivals. Welcome back, Princess Ming. I couldn't help but smile lightly when I saw that crooked, childish welcome sign. Caspian squeezed through the crowd, excitedly running towards me and giving me a big hug. How did you lose so much weight? Caspian's concerned words made the grievances in my heart burst forth, and tears streamed down my face. Sister, you've been wronged. Aloan came over with 6-year-old Finian, gently wiping away my tears with a pained expression, her eyes filled with affection. Caspian gritted his teeth in anger, clenching his fists as he said, that Thaddeus is such a jerk, he better not show up in front of me, or I'll make him pay. Aloan shot a glare at Caspian, then took my hand and hugged me tightly, saying, Sister, don't be afraid. You're back now, and with so many people at home, We won't let you be wronged. With tears in my eyes, I forced a smile and nodded, but as I lowered my head, a big tear fell onto the back of my hand. Actually, I had never told Caspian about my situation with Thaddeus, but the exhaustion and lack of energy on my face were undeniable to them. Perhaps it's the tacit understanding between siblings. Almost at first sight, Caspian's eyes turned red, and now they are really red. You should have come back long ago. You got married, and now it feels like you've disappeared. You haven't come back even once, and when we ask for your address, you don't want us to visit. You know, just thinking about you being there alone makes your sister-in-law and me very worried. I lowered my head in guilt. All these years, I have been busy with Thaddeus's career, not daring to take a proper break even on holidays. Whenever I finally have a holiday, it always gets interrupted by various things. I haven't come back even once, and Thaddeus, knowing that I have a brother who has always been concerned about me, never mentioned that I should go home to visit. He doesn't care about it at all. When I was in the car, as soon as I opened my phone, messages and calls flooded in like a tide. The phone vibrated continuously for over a minute without stopping. While Caspian was driving, he caught a glimpse ahead and couldn't help but frown. Is that guy still not giving up? I took a deep breath and reassured Caspian, it's fine, I can handle it. I didn't answer the phone right away. Instead, I put my phone on silent and continued chatting with Caspian. Later, feeling tired, I tilted my head and fell asleep. It wasn't until I got back to Caspian's house and entered the room alone prepared for me that I answered the barrage of unfamiliar calls. On the other end of the line, various insults and accusations came rushing in. Mingyue, do you think you can just run away after making such a mess? You've learned some skills, daring to block me, not answering calls or messages, haven't you? You've stirred up trouble for Serafina like this, and now you're just walking away. Who's going to clean up the mess you've left? Let me tell you, you need to come back within an hour, apologize to Serafina face to face, and explain those disgraceful tactics to the entire company. On the phone, Serafina's sobbing voice was clearly audible. Thaddeus, don't scold Mingyue. She just can't accept it for now. It's not her fault. It's all my fault. I'm just not capable enough. You've put in so much effort for me, and yet I'm not even as capable as Mingyue. I'm really sorry to you. Serafina's self-reflection didn't make Thaddeus feel she was wrong. Instead, it made him more heartbroken, and he shouted at me, Mingyue, I warn you, you'd better apologize quickly. Maybe I can consider forgiving you, otherwise, I'll issue a ban. I was amused by their performance. Thaddeus, we are already divorced, and I've resigned. Before resigning, I handed over all my work to Serafina. What right do you have to command me now? And a ban in the industry? Do you think you're a big shot who can control everything? Is it all up to you? I interrupted whatever Thaddeus was about to say. He paused on the other end of the phone but then started to throw a tantrum. Even if you've resigned, if you deliberately caused trouble during the handover, I still have the right to hold you accountable. You did these things and want to leave easily. Who gave you the audacity? I was a bit impatient. Thaddeus, there are so many cameras in the company. Just use your brain, and you can think of checking the footage. Whether I did it or not, it will be clear once you check. By the way, please tell Serafina that instead of wasting time on unnecessary trivial matters, she should focus on improving her professional skills. If she really can't improve, then she should go to the waste disposal station. That's where she belongs. I hung up the phone and blocked the number. Then, I deleted all the chat records and photos related to him from my phone. I didn't expect there to be over 30,000 photos on my phone, all capturing moments about Thaddeus, along with hundreds of videos. The phone was getting a bit sluggish, but after clearing these photos filled with years of emotions, it slowly became smooth again. Seeing the words clean up complete, I suddenly felt a void in my heart. Aloan softly called me from outside, inviting me to dinner. I quickly adjusted my emotions, put my phone in my pocket, donned a bright and cheerful smile, and opened the door. Outside, Aloan and Caspian were looking at me with concern. Aloan pulled me to the dining table, wearing a slightly nervous smile. Sister, you should try these dishes. I heard about them from your brother, so I don't know if you'll like them. I glanced at the dishes on the table. They were all my favorites. In an instant, my eyes became a bit moist. Aloan served me some dishes, and they tasted really good. I couldn't help but give her a thumbs up and praised, Aloan, your cooking is amazing. It's exactly like the hometown dishes in my memory. I love it so much. After hearing these compliments, Eloan felt a bit shy, rubbing her hands and saying, as long as you like it, that's good. This meal felt particularly warm, with the gentle Eloan, the steady Caspian, and the lively Finian, making me feel the warmth of home. The care from family filled my empty heart, and I felt a warm glow inside. I really wish these days could last a little longer. Unfortunately, I always get restless and went back to work after just a few days. This time I found a more relaxed job as an assistant in a pet store. Every day, I only need to sell pet food and toys, and manage some online orders. It's very easy. With more time, there was also more time to chat. Not everyone in the company supports the couple Thaddeus and Serafina. Some people secretly disapprove of Serafina's behavior. As a result, many of my former colleagues began to voluntarily share updates with me. For example, Thaddeus did check the surveillance footage and saw Serafina using anonymous software. I've never seen someone so foolish, trying to frame you and ending up exposing themselves. Thaddeus's face changed immediately, and he fired her on the spot. Looking at the messages from my colleagues, I felt nothing. Everyone could see that Serafina was trying to deal with Thaddeus, and much of what she did was to sow discord between him and me. This time, she sabotaged herself to completely destroy my image in his eyes, hoping for a smooth divorce. She was never simple, only Thaddeus still believed in her. After chatting a bit, a colleague gossiped, by the way, the project that Thaddeus forcibly transferred to Serafina has run into trouble. It was already nearing the final stage, just needed a confirmation to sign the contract, but she changed a word without permission. As a result, the data didn't match, and it nearly caused a major issue. The other party got angry and directly canceled the cooperation, stating they would no longer work with Thaddeus in the future. I listened quietly and couldn't help but smile slightly. That company is a client I worked hard to secure. They are willing to sign with Thaddeus mainly because of my influence. Now that I'm gone, no one can handle him, and it's only a matter of time before the partnership is canceled. But what does that have to do with me? I wear headphones, listening to colleagues gossip while responding to orders on the platform. I handle these tasks with ease, and the pet store's business is getting better. The owner has almost entrusted everything to me. So, I got busy again. Not long after the busy days began, a colleague brought new news. Thaddeus came looking for you. He threw a huge tantrum yesterday, tore up the client's contract, and kicked them out. He hurriedly bought a ticket in the afternoon and hasn't come to work this morning. I paused briefly in processing orders, then continued to pretend nothing was wrong and focused on my work. I haven't told anyone my current address, and I wonder what exactly I'm afraid of. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but for the next few days, I felt like there were eyes watching me from the shadows. That gaze was intense and piercing, impossible to ignore. Just when I was feeling anxious, a figure pushed open the glass door of the pet store. "Welcome! How can I assist you?" I hadn't even looked up when the welcoming words slipped out. "Ming Yue." A deep and familiar voice rang out, and the smile on my face slowly faded. "What are you doing here?" Seeing Thaddeus with his unshaven face and messy hair, I couldn't help but think of the man who used to dress well and maintain a neat appearance. The change was so drastic that I could hardly recognize him at first. "Ming Yue, come back with me." Thaddeus's eyes were bloodshot, and his voice was hoarse. "You blocked me. I've been looking for you for a long time. How can you be so heartless?" As he spoke, he reached out to grab me, and I quickly took a step back. "Thaddeus, we are already divorced." These words hit Thaddeus like a stone, causing him to bend over even more. "Let's remarry. I can give you whatever you want. It was all my fault before. I was too impulsive. Don't leave me. I misunderstood you. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have believed others without getting the full story. Can you forgive me? If you forgive me, we can remarry and go back to how we were, okay?" I looked at him coldly, full of sarcasm. "Do you think I divorced you because you wronged me? No, that was just the last straw. Your heart has long since drifted away. You don't care about me at all. Now you're pretending to come back just because I'm more useful than Serafina." Thaddeus's expression twisted, showing pain and anguish. I continued, "Do you think this is just a project? And our anniversary, and the time you left me at the hospital, Anne?" I listed them one by one, and Thaddeus's pain became increasingly evident. He crouched down in agony, gripping his hair, and choked out, I didn't know you suffered so much. It's my fault. I neglected you too much. I'm sorry. I thought I thought there were so many doctors in the hospital, you'd be fine. I never expected. But after all these years together, are you really just going to give up so easily? I don't want a divorce. I just want you to calm down before withdrawing the application. I didn't expect. I interrupted him. You always do this, telling me to manage my emotions and handle it myself. Why is it my responsibility? Do you think this will solve the problems in our marriage? No, those problems remain unresolved. They just keep piling up until they crush me like a snowball. I took a deep breath, suppressing my dissatisfaction, and coldly said, just go. I feel uncomfortable just seeing you. Thaddeus just wouldn't give up, going to the pet store every day. He bought a cat and brought flowers to the store every day, placing them at the front desk for himself, then using that as an excuse to buy toys and cat food, clearly clueless but asking me questions daily. I found the growing number of flowers in the store really annoying, so I asked the boss for a little vacation and snuck out to have some fun. I heard from the boss that Thaddeus still wouldn't give up, buying either milk tea or cake every day, trying to win over the boss and other employees, and would buy dozens of boxes of cat food and cans in one go. The boss joked, he helped me achieve this year's performance in just 3 days. I couldn't take it anymore, so I took Thaddeus off my blacklist and said, if you keep bothering my life, I'll call the police. Does he think I would be moved by these little tricks? I'm no longer that naive girl. I don't care about cheap gestures or belated feelings like this. My words left Thaddeus extremely unwilling. He actually found my brother's house and blocked me at the community entrance that same day. In the bustling crowd, Thaddeus knelt on one knee, holding a large bouquet of roses, and shouted through a megaphone, Ms. Mingyue, I was wrong. Can you forgive me and come home with me? Caspian was so angry that he rolled up his sleeves, ready to rush in and teach him a lesson, but was stopped by Aloan. Finian took the opportunity to step forward, pointing at him and yelling, you're the irresponsible one, finding a mistress, bullying my aunt, and leaving her in the hospital to wait. You even kicked my aunt out of the company because of the mistress. You're really a bad person. Finian's words immediately sparked discussions among the onlookers, and Thaddeus's expression turned dark in an instant. I quickly hugged Finian back, and before I could say anything, a woman clutching her stomach and supporting her waist squeezed out from the crowd. Thaddeus! Do you not want me and the child anymore? It turned out to be Serafina. Thaddeus turned around and immediately showed a hint of panic on his face. Thaddeus, please come back with me. The company needs you, and I can't live without you and the child. Serafina shot me a glance filled with resentment, but quickly restrained her emotions, lowering her head to tug at Thaddeus's sleeve. Thaddeus looked anxious and hurriedly said to me, Mingyue, things are not as you think. Serafina's face was filled with sorrow. I couldn't help but let out a scoff, saying, Thaddeus, since you already have a child, just live your life well. I no longer have the habit of picking up trash. Holding Finian, I left the crowd, and Caspian and Aloan quickly came over to greet us. Finally, our family of 4 slowly disappeared from everyone's sight. Thaddeus still followed them back. I heard from a colleague that he and Serafina got their marriage certificate, but on the day the child was born, they had a huge fight, and he left her at the hospital and ran away. One colleague gloatingly said, you wouldn't believe it, the child was born with such dark skin, clearly not local. I can't figure out where Serafina found someone like that. I'm not interested in their little dramas, so I didn't listen further. I've been really busy lately. My boss thinks it's a waste for me to only work at one store, so he opened a branch and made me the manager, pushing all the work onto me and ignoring it. However, the monthly bonuses make me wake up happy every day. My life is getting better and better. There's really no need to waste time on people and things that aren't worth it. What does their ending have to do with me?